Say something. Say something.
Hey. Hey. I need you closer, little bulldozer.
Hey guys, I'm Eric Palahovich, and I'm here with Kevin Devine and of Kevin Devine fame.
Fame is very. Be careful with that. They might fire you if you, as a journalist, if you use that word to touch this.
So, you released your 7th and 8th albums, Bulldozer and Bubblegum, at the end of last year.
Yep.
What prompted the dual release?
We did a Kickstarter to raise the money to make the records and release them on our own, and fund them. I mean, and tour them and like market them and sort of act as our own record label. And I thought it was something other bands have done this before us, but it was something I was thinking about for a while because I think there were sort of two sides of the music that we put out. There's like, and the live band was moving towards this bubblegum sound. It was more like spiky and kind of informed by Nirvana and the Pixies and the Breeders and stuff like that.
You can definitely hear it.
Yeah, and then there's this other side that I wouldn't call it folk music, but there's like a sort of acoustic pop sensibility and also a little bit of things like Big Star or like the Lemonheads or Not a Surf, kind of like power pop stuff. So that Bulldozer record kind of became some more of that. And then a little like folk stuff in there too. But I think it was to try to justify the existence of the Kickstarter to me. It was like, I felt so initially strange about asking our audience to like give us money in that way. Even though the audience gives you money in other ways, that one felt a little, that was different. So I thought, well, I'll feel better about it if we make 2 records, and also it'll get to flex like both sides of this thing that this music's become. So that was why we ended up doing it. And also I think doing it on our own, if we had gone into any record label and asked them for $100 grand to make 2 records at the same time and let them have like no say in how they were marketed or toured, they would have been like, you can leave, you know, because we don't sell enough records to justify that kind of thing from a label. So that was all the reasons why, and it turned out, so far it's been amazing. It's really been the best passage of my experience internally of my career so far.
I was going to ask 2 things, which you kind of touched on. I was going to ask first, did anyone say that you were crazy for doing a dual release? Was anyone like, Kevin, man, what are you doing?
No, people all the time.
Yeah.
No. No, I think that initially some of the people we work with, I have to say to their credit, the guys who managed this, they were they saw it and they were like, go, do it, cool, whatever you think is the right thing. And they understood its value and also that it was different and would make it a part of the story. Some of the people we work with, I think it's just sort of unorthodox, and it makes it some of their jobs a little more, not difficult, they have to be a little bit more creative and patient. Because working 2 records at once means, like for us, it's meant like we're focused. First, we really focused on the Bubblegum record. And that's still kind of, that's been more than the Bulldozer record, and now we're going to put out a song from that as a single.
Okay.
And so it's going to kind of transition into putting a little more emphasis on that record. But it's kind of like going back and forth, and since it's 20-something songs, you can be really, from my perspective, it was like, well, let's work this for 2 years, because you can. The material's there. But that's not how it typically, and now record cycles shrink, like every year it gets shorter because of the speed at which the internet existing has made sort of record cycles kind of contract. Bands are kind of having to constantly put out new stuff, and so I think we're kind of doing something that's a little bit anachronistic in that way, but it's also working so far. So I'm in its way. It's little, it's in its own way. So we're just kind of trying to. I don't know if they thought it was nuts. I think there were some people who had misgivings about it making their lives a little bit more difficult, but so far everyone's been on board.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then the other point that you touched on was how has the response been? You said it was pretty good, but like, is there anything specific that you've met with fans and stuff and heard? How has it been overall?
I think to this point it seemed like the enthusiasm from the Kickstarter campaign really carried over into the making of the records, and then the way the records got received upon release, and how the tours have gone. Like, you know, I'm not specifically a numbers kind of person. My career kind of has existed sort of outside these things. But These are like the two highest charting records we've ever had on Billboard.
Yeah.
They came out. We had like a charting single on Alt Nation on Sirius, which is never
I saw
happened
that.
before. And the tour was the biggest headlining tour we'd ever done in terms of people coming and buying tickets. So in those very traditional numerical ways, it's the best received of anything we've done so far. I think combined the records are at like 10,000 copies sold, which for a band of in our world is quite good. I mean, especially kind of 5 months into them being out, or 6 months. You know, the world's different in that way now than it was in the mid-90s. I think if these records came out then, like more than 10,000 people know this music.
Yeah.
But that's how many people buy the record. You know, it's a different thing now. That exchange has changed. So, but I mean, also there's non-numerical ways. It just feels like people really warmed to the records quickly and were willing to like accept them as these different pieces of music and different experiments. And I think that the Bubblegum record in specific was really exciting for a lot of people who like our band, because I think it's like a much more concentrated and adrenalized version of our music than we'd ever really put on a full record before. It's very like punchy, and it's exciting. I think we felt that way making it too. So yeah, I feel like their response has mirrored our enthusiasm, and it's been so far. It's just so it's cheesy, but it's just been such a overwhelmingly positive experience so far.
Yeah. I mean, there's multiple ways to gauge the success of a record, and it sounds like all around 360 degrees, it's been very successful.
So far, in its way. I mean, it's still not like, you know, we got a lot of really nice press, but there's still places that don't write about it. We did well on tour, but there's still places that don't do as well. You know, like a career like mine is a lot more about like a very gradual development. And so in perspective, it's enormously successful, but it's still like one step at a time.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, and I think it always is until you stop doing it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
I know what you're going to ask about the racism stuff, but it's not true. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, there were some songs like Fiscal Cliff and Redbird, which they were kind of different from what you've done. Were there some nerves behind that, releasing that?
Fiscal Cliff for sure. I can say this, and I don't know if it'll sound, it's just true. So Redbird, to me, when I wrote that initial structure of that song before I sent it to and everyone, and it became such a cool thing. But the structure of it, the basic idea, I loved that. Like I wrote that and I was like really psyched to share it with the band and with Jesse, because I thought it was a little different, but I thought it felt like something. You know, that was done and I was like, oh, this is cool. This is gonna be really cool. Fiscal Cliff I wrote, and I remember like sending it to Fatum and Stramberg, and I think Jesse too, and I was like, I don't even know if is this like laughable, because it was like the talk singing in the verses, and you know, it was a little bit like, I don't know what the hell it was. Like, I think I was thinking in my head of things like, you know, some of like Aaron Weiss's stuff, Me Without You, or bands like the Dead Kennedys or something, but it probably sounds like Pearl Jam. But that was like what. And I remember sending it to them and being like, is that even a thing, or is this like super dumb? And everyone was like, no, it's cool, we should do it. And then once that was like out of the way, there was no nerves. For me, it was like, just write it, and if it sucks, they'll be like, no dude, that sucks. Or they'll be like, let's fix it.
Working with your friends and working with Jesse on the album, were they very honest with you? I mean,
I think
you
so.
felt that there was a relationship there that you guys could be honest?
Yeah, oh yeah, because the touring band, like me and Mike had been touring for the better part of 4 years. And Stramberg more like 6. But the three of us have been on like hundreds and hundreds of shows together in Europe and the UK and the US and Canada and festivals. And so by the time we got to that process, making that record that way, no one was going to be like, we wanted to make a great record, and if they thought if anyone thought anyone else was getting in the way of that, it got spoken to. But also we worked together so well that there wasn't much contentious time. And Jesse is as close to a band member as you could be without being a band member. He's seen hundreds of our shows. He's listened to all. He's been intimate. He's been at the recording for 3 or 4 of the albums or something. So he has a really unique perspective as a songwriter himself, but also as a guy who's like really intimately acquainted with the music we make, but not in it. So he could be like, "That's that thing you do. Don't do it here," or "You need to do that thing you do."
That's a good relationship to have with
Oh, it was awesome. It was totally beneficial for the record. And I could say similar things in a different direction about working with Rob, who is like a person who I ended up meeting initially being very intimidated by because he's a bit older and he knows so much about music, and he made all the Elliott Smith records, which to me are like, they're very much like in the DNA. And I was like, oh my God, made a record with him and wasn't really where I am today. Made more songs with him and just kind of kept getting more and more like a peer relationship. And by the time we got to Bulldozer, it just felt like we were like, and that was in a different way, very, I feel like the Jesse thing pushed out and the Rob thing made me like, Rob makes you smarter. You work with him and he makes you like, think about arrangement and chord progressions and yeah, he's like, both of those dudes were the right guys for those records, for sure.
Awesome. That's great. And you're playing tonight at Penn State.
That's
right. You played at colleges before?
Yeah, a bunch of times. Yeah.
And how do you feel about the shows? What's the environment like? Do you like playing shows?
I do. I think it's different. I think there's something different about, I think a lot of times on a college campus, like, there's always a lot of entertainment, and a lot of it is free, you know, and a lot of it is, well, you're paying to be at the schools, but you know what I mean? These like things are, so I think the relationship, I don't know the right way to say it, it feels a little bit less like a proper show in some respects because the audience receives the show a little differently than at a club or whatever. But I've had really fun, and they're usually kind of different and a little weird in a cool way, and you know, the shows are, I think there's a charm to each of them. I think I've played some college shows that have been like less than optimal in terms of that relationship. Like the audience can be a little more like sort of scattered or passive. But then I've played other ones that I thought were really awesome. So, and that room is cool.
Yeah,
it's kind of a punk rock show.
Yeah.
So
awesome. So where will we see Kevin Devine in 5 years?
In 5 years, I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope still playing music and traveling and putting out records, but I mean that's a one record at a time kind of thing. I mean, there is an audience for it, and it's an audience that keeps growing, and but it's also we are making a move towards doing stuff very independently at this point and self-financing like all of it, which is really great.
That's cool.
But it's also really challenging because it's not like we're a band or a project that generates millions of dollars. So I think that to be just bold, like frank about it, there is an aspect of, I can't say if it'll be going on for 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years the way it is now, because I don't know if that'll be like fiscally viable, but it is now, and that's going to be that way for at least a little while. So yeah, hopefully, but I'm sure still writing songs, and whether I'm like doing that for a living or doing it because I love doing it, I don't know yet.
Do you have any tips on facial hair care?
Ha! I am not great at that, but I recently, someone gave me one of those Norelco electric razors. Look at me. No, I'm just joking. Someone gave me one of those Norelco electric razors, and it really helps to get like a nice kind of, you know, I can still have a little thing going on, but it's like kind of sleeker.
Keep it clean.
You can keep it clean. Cleaner.
Yeah, it's
what?
It's nicely.
Yeah. You have a nice thing coming in.
You're working
kind of.
It's growing.
I kind of just need to shave. It's just kind of. This is more like laziness as opposed to.
I think they'll agree. I think you look great.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I've always thought that about you. Yeah.
Last question.
Yes.
You've been writing and releasing music for multiple bands under like, you know, with different styles for what 14 years now.
Oh my God, quite a while between Miracle and the Kevin Devine stuff,
Yeah.
and then the Bad Book stuff. Yeah.
And where do you find the inspiration for all this? There's, for so long, so many songs, all different projects. Where does it come from?
I don't know. I mean, it's. I really like the puzzle of writing songs, and I think like figuring out. I don't write songs that are like super stylistically groundbreaking. So I think the thing I like is to try to find interesting ways to not reinvent the wheel, but like put
Small changes.
new interesting spokes in it or something. I think that the inspiration for stuff is from all kinds of places, from other songs, from books, from movies, from conversations, from the world around you, from your past, from dreams, from stories you make up looking at people in the street. Like that stuff has always just been there. Sometimes I write more than others. I haven't written a lot since the records, just because that was I wrote like 25 songs in 4 months or something. So now it's kind of like play them, get good at playing them. And but I wrote something recently that I think is going to be on the next Bad Books record. It comes, whether I've learned to be more patient. I used to think like, oh, it's never coming back. I wrote the last one I'm ever going to write. And now I realize that's not true. That's also with help from friends who told me, like, hey dude, that's not true. It's going to come back, it always does. But,
Great. Is there anything else you want to say?
no, thank you. It was good to talk to you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. I
Thanks.
genuinely appreciate it. Thank
Oh,
you very
my
much.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.